first presentation is the presentation on economic development, empowerment strategies from the report of equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation.
Chair Mitchell, we're going to ask Meg Thompson and Ruth Jordan to make those presentations, and I will defer to them for that.
Okay, that's fine.
Good afternoon, Chairman and City Council members. My name is Meg Thompson. I'm the Director of Business and Neighborhood Services for the City of Charleston. My office was lucky enough to staff the Special Commission Subcommittee on Economic Empowerment, and we're here today to talk to you about the recommendations for those reports and things that we have been working on and how they fit into those recommendations. So I'm going to bring up a quick presentation that we're going to run through. All right. But before we get into it, the chair of our subcommittee unfortunately wasn't able to join us, but I do want to do a big thank you to this group of citizens who dedicated their time to putting together these recommendations. I know every subcommittee was passionate about their work, but this group in particular, I want to give a shout out to, and Amber can back me up. There for a while, they were meeting every single week to talk about these ideas. Councilmember Jackson actually joined us on a lot of those meetings, so she can also see like how passionate they were. The staff who typically join those meetings were myself and Ruth Jordan, who is our Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Manager, also Christina Oth, our Project Coordinator, and of course, Amber Johnson, our Equity Manager. And each of us will be sharing a little bit today about what we were working on. So to start, I wanted to share where the subcommittee actually started. To talk about economic empowerment, they wanted to first define what that means. So this is the definition that the group came up with, and I'm just going to read it really quickly because they worked really hard on it. Economic empowerment is the capacity of individuals to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from the growth processes in a way that recognize the value of their contributions, respect their dignity, and make it possible to negotiate a fair distribution of the benefits of growth. So this was kind of the basis for the work that the subcommittee did, with also a key intention of addressing the business success of minority-owned businesses by developing a strong entrepreneurship ecosystem in communities of color. So a lot of the recommendations they came up with were centered around minority-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses. All right, so how I've kind of structured this, because I know it is a lot in that report. What I've done is pulled out the long-term goal and then each of the strategies that we're working on around that goal, and kind of have a list of things that are in progress around that. So one of the long-term goals of their recommendations was improve access to capital for Black-owned business. The strategy around that was to create a database of Black-owned businesses, because the idea was you can't really make sure you're improving access to capital to folks if you don't know who's out there. Now there's a few different efforts around this. The picture I'm showing here is actually the Metro Chamber's new minority business directory that they've developed. Kenya Dunn was a fellow with the chamber, and she was on our subcommittee. So this was an effort that she's kind of been working on with them. Also want to mention that we do have a database of MWBEs that Ruth manages through her certifications. We're going to talk a little bit later about how we're improving that database, but that's something that the city has had for quite a while. And then I do want to turn it over to Amber to talk about a grant through the National League of Cities that is helping us kind of collect and analyze this data. So Amber.
Meg. So over the summer, the National League of Cities awarded us the Equitable Economic Mobility Initiative. It's a technical assistance cohort and grant opportunity for us. I partnered with Christina and Mindy Stern from our Office for Children, Youth, and Family. We've been working together to create a database, a data system to collect the information regarding Black-owned businesses, as well as the needs of our residents. for this grant opportunity. The purpose of the grant is to catalyze municipal action to expand economic mobility for residents while eliminating longstanding racial inequities. Our goal for the project is to build out the data system that we have that incorporates quantitative and qualitative data that can be disaggregated to identify the needs of our residents and our Black-owned businesses. So we've been working to build out that system that will let us know how many Black-owned businesses we have, and to also pull the data so that we know what our needs are as far as workforce, wages, and so forth. And I think Christina can kind of give us some more details about our data that we're collecting.
Sure. Thanks, Amber. And like Meg said, we're trying to figure out what kinds of businesses we have in our area. So we're also working with our business license folks to get demographic information on our business licenses, and be able to pull that and add that to this equitable economic mobility work. We're partnering with this software company called My Sidewalk that pulls data from a bunch of different sources, from the census and other sources. We can also upload our own data and kind of have a GIS mapping function and pull reports with it. So to kind of help us paint the picture of, again, what kind of businesses we have in our city.
Thank you both.
Ethan.
All right. So another long-term goal in the report is to create a mechanism to ensure Black-owned businesses have the opportunity to pursue and secure government contracts. So really obvious strategy under there is to improve government contracting. And we're doing several things around this area. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Ruth Jordan to talk about how we're improving our certification requirements, looking at tracking our procurement spending, and also how we want to improve procurement overall. So Ruth, go ahead.
So again, my name is Ruth Jordan. I'm with the city's Office of Women Minority Business. I'm the manager. In 1980, City Council passed an ordinance, that's Ordinance 162, Section 2-268. And it stated that in furtherance of sound procurement practices, that all business entities be accorded a real and equitable opportunity to participate in the City of Charleston's procurement. It also specified city-controlled dollars must provide an opportunity for qualified MWBEs, that's women and minority business enterprises, to compete and be awarded opportunities. Our current participation goals are 20% in construction, 20% in services, and 12% in supplies. The city's Office of Women Minority Business primary mission is three things: MWBE certification, business development and technical assistance, and advocacy and connecting businesses to business. And so that's what the ordinance set out to do. In 2019, we had an external review of our current program. This external review was done by the Tennessee Office of Economic Development here in 2019. And they found that the city could do more to meet its commitment to support and provide opportunities for MWBEs. They stated in that report that we lagged behind in accomplishing what our ordinance asked us to do since 1980. And so what we've done over the past 18 months is working on our application process, working with our innovation officer, Tracy McGee, to digitize and secure our application process. We're also working currently on our database. We have a current database that has nearly 400 MWBEs on it. Our database is used throughout the region. The airport uses our database. Other counties use our database. Private sector use our database. But this database definitely needs to be updated by creating a web-based system that can be updated in real time with the convenience outward-facing appearance and search functions. And then our final thing that we're going to do is develop a staff working group to consider strategizing in and around aligning our county, state, and CCSD procurement policies. What we're looking at is, what is the state doing? What is the county doing? And what is CCS doing? And what can we do to be in line with their procurement policies. Next slide, please. Here are our current certification requirements. Currently, we accept businesses who've been in business for at least 2 years. They must meet the criteria, the federal standards of being a women or minority-owned business, must own 51% ownership, substantially involved in the day-to-day management. They must provide the following documentation: 2 years of federal taxes, a business license, owner ID, deed, or lease agreement. And so what we are proposing going forward is to be in line with the county and the state, that instead of making business be in business for 2 full years, that we require them to be in business for 1+ full years. And then in addition to that, we never had any written guidelines for businesses. So we've worked with Mallory over in our legal division and to help us craft this language as well. Owners must meet the federal requirements and be socially, economically disadvantaged, have a net worth not to exceed $1.3 million, and gross revenues not to exceed 7.5. And then that does not include their equity and their value of their business. And then out-of-state businesses must provide a reciprocal certification, federal or from their home state. And they must again meet all the other requirements by the city. Someone asked the question, why do you put a certification clause about reciprocal for out of states? Well, one of the complaints that we've gotten is that why are we giving all of our business to out of state businesses? And so we're going to make sure that those businesses do meet the qualifications and the certification and try to do more things locally. Next slide, please. Here is our current tracking.
Wait a minute, Mr. Jordan, can we go back to the previous slide, please?
Yes, sir.
We required 2 years tax return?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm just curious why.
So again, the state as well as the county requires the 2 years tax returns because as you see on the other side, the net worth of the business cannot be, or the owner can't exceed 1.3 million, and the gross revenues cannot exceed 7.5 million. And so that's where we get those numbers and being able to substantiate and document that.
So people trying to do business with us, we ask for a copy of their tax return?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's required in all certifications, whether it's SBA, whether it's SCDOT or SBE. That's part of the certification process.
When it comes to majority business, do they have to submit tax returns?
Yes.
So when the people did the Gill Yard, the construction company that did that had to submit tax returns?
So again, for MWBEs who are, again, in order to get the certification, MWBE, they have, if they want to be certified with the city of Charleston, typically the primes do not or are not certified, but the subs are.
So I just think that's I think that's an unfair requirement. We're not applying for a loan from us. We're not trying to certify that they can pay us back. We advance them money or something like that, and they got the cash flow to pay us back. Normally through tax returns, you're trying to figure out. Well, a loan officer, we got Ms. Jonah Shaw Johnson, loan officer, try to go through and figure out somebody's cash flow to make sure they can repay you back. But I can understand the SBA wanting that. I don't understand the city wanting that. My point is.
So Councilmember Waring, that is part of the certification process. Again, here in the city, the county, and the state, and other national certifications. And so if we have income limitations, such as gross revenues not to exceed 7.5, that's the only way that we can be able to substantiate that. Now, I've had companies who made $1 billion with a B. Right. That wants to be certified as a minority disadvantaged certified company. And so we must have income limitations.
So is that personal returns or both?
That's gross sales.
So you need the business return.
Business,
Not the
business
personal.
returns or personal, because sometimes they have, small companies sometimes do their personal
Right.
income taxes and have a Schedule C attached to it, or a K1 or K2 form or M1, M2 forms in terms of business taxes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. But those are great questions, Councilmember. Okay, next slide. And so currently, we do not have a great way of tracking how much money we're spending with MWBEs overall. And so over the past 18 months, I've been working with Tracy McGee and with our capital project departments, as well as procurement, to come up with a system to track our MWBE spend. It was the mayor's number one priority is to see how much money are we really spending towards our MWBE goals. So currently, we implemented this document here called the MWBE Participation Report, started this year, for every project here in the city of Charleston, that this must be provided. So take, for instance, this is the Bender Street Park project. The original contract amount is $1,967,532. And then we have a MBE goal of 21.7%, and that amount is 428. And then it also currently lists who are the subs on that particular contract that makes up that 21.7%. Now, this is an Excel spreadsheet. Well, actually, it's not even a spreadsheet. It's just a form that we are currently using at this particular time. So what we're currently using is this, and Tracy McKee is putting an internal software program together to be able to hopefully digitize this and make it electronically, that we can aggregate all these numbers and be able to bring council a quarterly report of our MWBE spend. What we would like to get to is this next kind of program, which is called a BG2 Now. This is on the African American Museum. This is Turner Brownstone. This is a standardized tracking system called BG2 Now. It would go even further. What it would do is it would be able to tell you by categories what percentage of MWBEs, what percentage went to white women, what percentage went to African American businesses, what percentage went to Hispanics, disadvantaged, Asian Americans, and so forth and so on. And so on the African American Museum, we're at a 30.11% MWBE spend. And this report is given to my office monthly. And we'd like to eventually to get to this kind of software, but again, we have to work it in conjunction with one solution. So this is our long-term goal, is to get to a report like this. Any questions on where we'd like to get to?
Couple of questions. The first question is, there are instances where someone can bid on a contract and say they're going to do it all themselves, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when they say that, is there any way that we can sort of look at their employment as opposed to their use of MBE, WBE vendors as subs?
So I think that's a procurement and a capital project question, but I think you definitely could.
You see where I'm going with it? I mean, because there are many that come through and it's almost like soul sourcing it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, there's no competition. And perhaps because of the uniqueness of what they can provide is sometimes the reason. But it would be good to sort of just not check it off and sort of just get a sense of what their employment record might be.
Exactly. And I will tell you that CCSD, Charleston County School District, has a unique way of doing procurement. There was a change in the South Carolina procurement code that will allow a state agency or division to be able to award directly to a MWBE contracts up to $100,000 without any competition, provided that they are highly qualified and can do the work. And that's a change in the South Carolina code in order to help meet MWBE goals. And so we're going to look at all those kinds of policies and the changes that have occurred in the South Carolina Procurement Code, what CCSD is doing, what the county is doing, as well as other municipal governments are doing.
I'm sorry. In terms of technical assistance, we'll talk about debundling.
Yes.
And would we also at some point, especially if it's an up and coming MBE, WBE, identify capital? Maybe I'm getting into our incubator stuff, but
you're getting ahead of us.
Okay, I'll leave that.
I see where you're going, and we're going to get there.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
And so those are all strategic strategies that can be used in order for us to meet the goal. So it's one thing to have established an ordinance, but not having a strategic plan to meet those kinds of meet the goals are the kinds of things that you're talking about. Debundling, that can be easily done. Sometimes, it takes a little bit extra work, but I will tell you that some of our new project managers over at Capital Project, that's what they're doing now. They know it's a little bit extra work, but debundling is a way to get some of those smaller firms into the process so that they can cut their teeth. Sometimes I oftentimes tell them, you're not going to cut your teeth on a $5 million project. However, if it's debundled, where there are some scopes that some of these smaller companies can do, whether it's landscaping or whether it is carpentry or electrical. So those kinds of debundling pieces where they can get some experience, not to get some experience, but they may not be able to maybe get a surety bond for $5 million, but they can be bonded for $350,000. So those are all, again, strategies that we want to look at going forward. And that's why we're going to put together that work group. And I've already spoken with Gary Cooper and Edmund Most, and they're very open to putting together this work group. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Ruth. So another strategy under this idea of helping minority business secure government contracts is actually to expand our own MWBE office and what we're able to do. So I want to share with you a couple grants. One, Christina is going to talk about that we're in the process of applying for. One from the Economic Development Administration that we received last year and are in the process of executing. And then Councilmember Gregory kind of teased this already, but we want to talk about our first kind of big capital project for our office is our MWBE Incubator / Entrepreneur Center / we could use some help coming up with a name for this thing in the end, but we're very excited about it. So I'm going to go to Christina first.
Sure. Thanks, Meg. So another National League of Cities grant, like you said, we're in the process for, is to map different small business resources in our area. We'll be able to kind of identify gaps, look at different stages of entrepreneurship in our area. This will kind of serve as a roadmap for us to provide services from our office, while also giving us some ideas of our target audience for our MWBE incubator that Ruth's going to talk about.
And so earlier this year, we received a grant for $100,000. And that grant was specifically to help businesses be, prepared to do business. We developed what we call the Business Development Lab. And so with this grant, it is to help prepare businesses to scale and grow. It also was to help startup businesses as well as legacy businesses. So over the past, 7 months or so, we have been going full force with our Business Development Lab. We started in April of this year through 30 September. We have reached over 464 businesses that have attended our webinars. we were able to pivot during this COVID to do a 100% Zoom platform. We actually presented 9 actual workshops where over 464 businesses attended. We had 279 YouTube views. We partnered with 14 resource partners, as well as 4 panel experts. We actually were awarded some EDA funding, and that out of the $850,000 in EDA funding, we've made those loans, and now we have about $178,000 left, but a lot of that is already spoken for. And that was for COVID relief for women minority-owned businesses, specifically with the city of Charleston. We've also have been able to increase our certifications by 59 just between April and September 1. And so we are rocking and rolling with this business development lab. And it was all dedicated towards helping women minority businesses be successful and to recover from COVID-19. Next slide. So any questions about the business development lab?
Anyone have
How
any
about the
questions?
Rose Kids? How about and I'm not being facetious. I mean, is there any way that we can get, if we haven't gotten the Rose Kids together to participate in some of this?
So all of these particular webinars were webinars that was open to the public, and we definitely would like to have any of those kids to participate. And because they were all virtual, I will tell you, we had everything from why be certified, are you legal, how to win the contract, which was a 4-part series. We call it the Hour of Power every Wednesday night in the entire month of September. Contract compliance. We got the contract, now what? How to bid, understanding the scope of work. Because sometimes people don't know and don't understand even how to bid. We had Federal Contracting 101. We had, again, are you legal? Then we ended up in November, and I think it was the first week in November, meet the lenders in order to make sure that they have access to capital. So working with SBA, we had 6 lenders from small lenders all the way to large lenders, whether they were looking to borrow $5,000 or $5 million. And so we had over 200 people registered for Meet the Lenders webinar. And so we're looking at those results, hopefully within the next couple of months, to see how many people actually were able to get funding. So we had big banks all the way down to Optus Bank and Beacon Bank and the Climb Fund were just a few of the businesses or banks that were there. So,
I heard,
go ahead, Councilmember Mitchell.
I heard that what Councilman Gregory asked, but I think we have a new person that's over the Rose program now.
Yes.
So maybe he should be contacted so he can get involved if you're made to attend some of these workshops and meetings. So if something can be materialized from that, maybe it can happen.
Right. And so some of you may know that has been outsourced to another community agency.
Yes.
The reason
Eric Jackson.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Oh, the reason why I brought it up is that Mr. Baker assembled somebody's knocking my door, I'm sorry. Mr. Baker assembled a group of people and had a community lunch. And the focus was, what can we do for minority youth? Jimmy Bailey was there, and he did a presentation on the Rose Kids. And at the time, I didn't know that, we had gotten someone specifically to deal with that. But there was a lot of interest. because there was this, again, discussion, and this is not new to you, Ruth, in terms of trying to develop a cottage industry,
Yes, sir.
pulling them all together and try to develop a multi-million-dollar corporation. So that was put on the table. And I think that Jimmy was supposed to contact whoever's responsible for it now to have some discussion
Okay.
around
And
that.
so we'll definitely, Mindy Stern is the contact here for the city. And of course, she's the director of youth and family services here in the city.
Okay, I'll connect them.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And so our next big project that we're doing is the James Lewis, we don't know what we're gonna call it yet. It's the MWBE Incubator Retail Space and Corner Store. It's going to be located at the James Lewis Apartment Complex at 91 Hanover Street. We are excited about this particular incubator or accelerator. We're going to be open for names of what we want to name this building. I've talked with the South Carolina Commerce, and they said incubators is passé. So we need to call it something else. And so we'll be open to getting your input on this. But this is where we are. The developer there at the James Lewis Apartment Complex has agreed to provide the city of Charleston with this 8,000 square feet of space on the first floor of the James Lewis Apartment Complex. On the first floor is where we're going to have an incubator. As you can see, on one side will be our traditional office, co-working spaces, training spaces, resource spaces, conference rooms, a data center, all will be in this space. Then also what's unique too is this. We're going to have 2 retail spots. As you can see on here, we have retail 1 and retail 2. And you asked the question, why have a retail space in an incubator? Well, one of the things is this. We have so many businesses who are purveyors of products or supplies, but cannot necessarily afford a space here downtown Charleston. And so being able to have this retail space for businesses to provide them access and opportunity to sell their products in this retail space is one of the ideas we have. We also looked at, even with the Palmetto Rose kids, being able to sell their products in one of these spaces. And so we've assembled a subcommittee who are looking at putting together the programmatic pieces of this. And we're going to look at the programmatic pieces in a second. But then also on the far side of this 8,000 square feet, as you know, there is a food desert there. I like to call it in the middle of town there, that we don't have a grocery store that's very, very close. And so we have all these apartments and affordable housing complex that are coming up and around that area. And we thought having a corner store, a real nice corner store with fresh vegetables, reasonable costing food would be there at the corner store. And so this incubator will help reconnect the community. This is in a space that was subdivided when they brought in the new Arthur Ravenel Bridge and they divided the community. We're looking at this space to be a connectivity of the community, bringing it back together. Even some of the residents that will be up in the apartments may want to be able to utilize even the incubator. Maybe somebody want to think about starting a business. So we want it to be community focused, as well as creating new businesses and helping existing businesses within this space. And so these are some of the key essential programming and resources that we're looking at, that the incubator will provide mentorship and advising, education and training, support and accountability, a co-work space and tools for success, and then also keeping in mind access to capital. And so all of these will be the key components and the focus of this incubator. And so we're working with the subcommittee to determine who are going to be our target market in terms of businesses that will have access to this. What kind of membership? What is it going to cost? Those kinds of things are where we're working in terms of the programmatic pieces. The developer has agreed to provide us, again, with a warm vanilla shell, and then we'll have to actually bill it out after they turn it over. So, but before I get into my funding request, any questions concerning the incubator?
I don't have a question, but pretty soon the South Carolina State Community Center will be open.
Yes, sir.
And maybe we need to even get with them to see what type programs that's going to be there too.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we wouldn't have to be a duplication, if you may, that if this can work in conjunction with one another, because they're going to have a lot of different programs in there that's going to be staffed by South Carolina State University and some of the people from the community. So I don't know exactly what type program is going to be in there yet, because I spoke with Delbert, we haven't come up with that yet. So maybe we need to get with them too to see what's going to happen, because that's going to be right next door to where this building is going to be built.
And so that's part of that mapping piece that Christina talked about, looking at what resources are available and who's doing what within the ecosystem, because we don't want to duplicate. We want to be able to provide access, and we have resource partners that we'd like to partner with. And so that might be another organization that we'd like to partner with, because we have so many community partners such as the Klein Fund or SBDC, the Women's Business Center, all a part of our partners. And so we definitely would like to partner with the South Carolina alumni, as well as Trident Tech, which is right around the corner as well. And thank you for reminding us of that.
Surely.
Councilmember Jackson has her hand up.
Thank you, Ruth. I haven't wanted to, really like interrupt your excellent recap of a lot of these things. So just building on what you just said in terms of the, likely partners. Do you have a short list of the people that you are inviting to be on the planning task force, or however you described it for the? And I've heard the word jumpstart is a popular way of talking about the incubator, industry right now. So I'd throw that one out there. I think it's very high energy and easy to remember. But have you all created a short list of the people that you're going to, look to not duplicate and be the force multipliers, which would be another way of talking about this. You're multiplying resources. Okay. Yeah. I'm particularly interested in your conversations and hopefully meaty discussions with Low Country Local First and the YWCA, who have each and they've joined forces to a big extent in educating and preparing women in business and minorities in business. So I'm hoping that you've got some, very ongoing, thorough connections to be determining for that. I guess advice or questions would focus around staffing for this facility. And again, I do think that you could be bringing in the groups that are already better prepared to provide that kind of ongoing staffing than the city's budget, is probably going to allow in the short term. So I'm hoping that you've got a lot of those irons in the fire. I don't know how much time you've allotted to the whole report, Meg, but I do have some other, more holistic comments about the focus of the goals and strategies that you've put in front of us today. So I'm happy to sit back and wait for that opportunity in a minute.
And so, Councilmember Jackson, we are putting together a short list currently, but the list is open. We're going to have I guess what we like to call it, a retreat Matter of fact, over at Low Country First, we're going to be using their space to do an incubator retreat on December the 11th to talk about these programmatic strategies and identifying our resource partners. And so some of the agencies that you talked about is at the table to have this discussion around. And so on December the 11th, we will be having a 3-hour retreat over at Low Country First. That's a Saturday, and you're welcome to attend. And we'll send you an invite as well. And we're open to any partners that you think that we need to have at the table. We're looking about 18 months out to have this up and rolling. And 18 months is not a long time.
That's great. I will consider your invitation. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And so last but not least,
we go.
This whole incubator concept have to be funded. Now, I will tell you that in terms of the cost of the facility, the developer is allowing the city to rent the facility for $1 a year. However, we have to be responsible for finishing out the construction and furnishing the incubator. And we're looking at an estimation of $1.5 million. And we're only going to be paying $1 a year for the space. But we're responsible for finishing out the construction and the furnishings. Because they're going to deliver to us a warm vanilla shell, which is going to have the walls, the ceilings, the electrical, but the light fixtures won't be in. The furnishings won't be in, and we'll be responsible for that. The windows will be in, but nothing else will be in. So we'll be responsible for finishing the interior.
And I'm assuming you're going to be involving the private sector in that opportunity, correct?
I hadn't thought about that, but I'll write it down.
Have you identified a source yet for the 1.5 million?
We're hoping the ARCO funds, or we also have requested through our Senator Kempson, through the state as well, to put us on their list as well.
So the aqua funds we would be able to use it for this?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a one-time expense, and I think at one of your ad hoc budget committee meetings, Councilman, reserve funds from next year's opera allocation.
Okay.
Yes, this is on Amy's radar as something to use this funding for, but we wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of the project as well.
Okay.
And I think that number keeps changing based on the other stuff we're adding to that one-time use list. So I don't think we should take this for granted. And I do think we should be looking at the private sector. I can't imagine a more attractive opportunity for people that consider themselves, invested in Charleston's future as a broad-based economic engine for the Low Country. I'm happy to be a salesperson for that. I have my elevator pitch already ready.
And Carol, as a part of that pitch, remember that it's the private sector that donated the space.
Right.
I think you're right.
So if I may add, we did include this on our list for the state ARPA funds that the South Carolina Senate and House will be considering when they reconvene in January. And Senator Kempson has made this a high priority for us to advocate for this funding. So if you see any of our representatives or state senators between now and the first of the year, keep plugging for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
And so you can see that these are things that we've already been working towards even before the report came out. And so everything that we're doing is, again, headed in the right direction in terms of increasing women minority-owned businesses here in the city, as well as developing and to grow the existing businesses.
All right, thank you. And I have one more slide for you all before I turn this over to some guest presenters that we have. So one of the final things that the subcommittee spent a lot of time talking about was access to capital and getting funds into the hands of business owners. We here in our office, that's not something that we do. We don't have a lending arm, and the city currently, now that the Klein Fund is its own independent organization, we don't really do small business lending in-house. So if we were to do that, we would have to work with the partner organizations. And as we were talking about coming to you all to do this report, Amber mentioned that she is part of another group that has been looking at these recommendations and how to actualize them. So I am actually going to turn it over to Amber to introduce that group, and they are going to give you guys a presentation of what it would look like if we were to actualize some of those recommendations.
Thanks, Meg. Tess Martin from the Coastal Community Foundation reached out to Councilman Sackett and I about this opportunity. She is the finance officer at Coastal, and she oversees their place-based impact investing program. She thought that this program was in alignment with the Economic Empowerment Committee. And so we've been participating with her in a program that's sponsored by the Philadelphia Federal Reserve called Reinventing Our Communities. And Tess is going to present on the project and the whole cohort that we've been participating in with Philadelphia Reserve.
Thank you, Amber. Meg, could you share the screen for the presentation, please?
Sure, happy to.
Thank you.
Let me switch over real quick.
Well, let me just begin by taking a moment to thank Mayor Tecklenburg as well as members of council. I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear what we've been doing with the Charleston Reinventing Our Communities program. As Amber mentioned, she and Councilman Sackett have been participating in what is known as Reinventing Our Communities. It is a Philadelphia sponsored program. We are actually Charleston, City of Charleston is participating on behalf of the Richmond Federal Reserve. So Richmond overseeing North and South Carolina. And we were approached with this opportunity in May of this year to really dive into a 10-month racial equity training. The first half was to go through racial equity. And then for the last 6 weeks or so, we've been meeting every other week to discuss technical assistance support training for small businesses. So just next slide, please. Again, so the focus of this year's Reinventing Our Communities program, or we just been calling ROC for short because it does have a long name, is to build back our local economies with a focus on equitable support for minority-owned businesses post-pandemic, post-COVID-19. So we're currently, in the phase of building out our multi-year racial equity plan and discussing ways that we can support Black-owned businesses in Charleston. To piggyback on what Meg and Ruth have just shared in their presentation, we look to the economic empowerment recommendations from the Special Commission to ensure that we were building upon the work that had been done for the last year and really looking to those recommendations and how we can support the goals and the conversations that were had in that committee, as well as the efforts of the city. One of our cohort members, Bernie Mazik, was on the Special Commission or the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee and was able to lend additional insight into what the conversations that were had in that group. So it has really been a robust discussion over the last couple of months. We've, not only with the racial equity training, but with the technical assistance, we've also been meeting every other week as a cohort to discuss our recommendations and ways that we can build and support minority businesses in our community. So we've also, additionally met with the chamber, had conversations about the Minority Business Accelerator program that's recently been committed with the grant support from Bank of America, with Adrian and Kenya to discuss ways that we can all support all of the efforts in this space and that we're not recreating the wheel here or duplicating. We're just working together to ensure the success of minority-owned businesses in our community. Next slide, thank you. So the ultimate goal that the cohort has really chosen to focus on is to empower and support a network of thriving minority businesses in Charleston and the surrounding area. As you all know, there's gentrification that's happened within Charleston, pushed many small businesses out. A report released from Stanford Economic Policy Research last year stated that 41% of Black-owned businesses closed between February and April of 2020, which was a rate higher than any other demographic. So we are really focused on ways with this cohort that we can support the minority businesses in our communities. As you'll see, there's 9 members that have been participating in this cohort of cohorts ranging from across the country. There's actually 3 cities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Charleston, Las Vegas, Minnesota. So we really have been sort of immersed in this conversation with 100+ participants to discuss ways that all of our communities have been impacted, and ways that we can share best practices, what our individual organizations are doing to really lift up and support the businesses in our community with a focus on minority-owned businesses. Next slide, please. So today I'm really here to discuss an opportunity. Amber Johnson is a cohort member, and we've been having these conversations around the initiatives in order to support the thriving minority business ecosystem, and think that there's really a twofold approach for us to receive funding, an opportunity for us to receive funding, and then a 3-pronged approach for us to sort of build out our plan. So I just wanted to briefly give an overview and then go into detail in the next couple of slides. But ideally, in order to support the efforts of the ROC cohort, we'd be able to leverage capital and ARPA funds to have numbers that we can work with as we're getting together over the next couple of months. We actually present at the end of March for the final cohort presentations our racial equity toolkit, which is being used to build out those 6 steps and ways that we can support minority-owned businesses and create success from startup to succession. So $2.25 million up to is being asked of the ARPA funds to seed and sustain small businesses, and that's a request of $500,000 to $750,000, which would look like small business grants, as well as scaling for success, which is a request of $1.25 to $1.5 million for minority-owned business investments. And if there's any questions that come up, please feel free to stop me in real time. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions at the end of this presentation.
I'm sorry, when you say the ARPA funds, are you talking about the city's delivered ARPA funds?
I am.
The 20 million? Okay, not what we're applying for directly to the governor or to the legislature.
No,
not
directly
the 2
from
points.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no.
The what is left of the second tranche of available ARPA dollars for the city of Charleston.
Okay, thanks.
So that first initiative, the way the seeding and sustaining small businesses, this would really inspire and support startups. So this $500,000 to $750,000 of small business grants would be early access to capital for those entrepreneurs that are looking to launch new business initiatives. So I know as part of the recommendations, one of which was the creation of 300 new businesses. And so looking at, putting a dollar on what up to a $5,000 new business grant would look like, that could potentially support 100 new minority-owned business enterprises. So these would, these $5,000 up to would be a one-time early stage access grant that we would actually partner with sub-grantees such as Low Country Local First, SCASID, Climb Fund to get these dollars into the hands of entrepreneurs that are looking to launch a business. This could be anything from marketing cost, purchasing equipment, creating a website, accounting services, but that really early access to capital. Many small businesses don't don't always go through, especially minority-owned businesses, don't always go through your typical financial institution to access capital. We'd like to avoid entrepreneurs considering, putting a substantial amount on their credit cards, or, reaching out to payday lenders and racking up debt that is, at an incredible interest rate. So these, there would be certain requirements in order to be eligible to tap into these grant dollars, but they would be, forgivable for those entrepreneurs just to have that access to capital that they need desperately to get their businesses launched and out and just off the ground. And then the second initiative would be Scaling for Success, and this would look like a revolving loan fund. So this request is 1.25 to 1.5 million for minority-owned business investments. CCF has launched our place-based impact investment portfolio. As Meg mentioned, I oversee those initiatives. That was launched in 2018, and so we have experience getting those dollars out the door and into the hands of businesses to support economic empowerment. We would partner with CDFIs and local banks to invest in and offer borrower-friendly loans to Black-owned businesses. These would really be targeted to businesses that are looking to scale, more mature, ready to potentially grow their efforts, hire additional employees, with loans ranging from $50,000 to $250,000. Another recommendation that was made as part of the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee was Black business building ownership. So thinking about an infrastructure fund so that we can encourage Black business owners to think about building ownership and that really long-term succession planning and ensuring that their businesses are in it for the long term. We all know that rents continue to increase, and so we want to ensure that these businesses that are currently operating and existing within the city have an opportunity to stay in the space that they're operating out of and don't get priced out and pushed out to outer boroughs or outer bands of North Charleston or outside of the city. Just to provide a couple of investment success stories from Coastal Community Foundation, we did make an investment in the Opportunity Center in 2018. This will be actually opening next month, which is exciting to announce. And I failed to mention two of my colleagues on this call, and I apologize for that, but Abigail Darlington is she oversees all of our communications efforts for Coastal Community Foundation, as well as Dorothea Bernique, who is also a cohort member and is the ED of Increasing Hope. And they provide technical assistance, financial literacy, and will be one of the 4 nonprofit tenants and partners. This is a forever home for them, including SCASID and Center for Heirs Property. Will provide business incubator, entrepreneurial shared space. So just one example, as well as DK Hayden, which was another one of our original investees. And this was a minority owned general contractor, worked on the MUSC Sean Jenkins Children's Hospital. And one of the requirements for our impact fund was to provide and report out on social impact measurements as well. Not only being a minority owned GC, but also he hired 3 subcontractors and 18 employees with an 82% minority employment rate. So providing capital for him to take on additional projects and work in the construction of the hospital a few years ago, further provided for job growth and opportunities for employment at $18 an hour for those employees, as well as job skills and training while working. So it is equal parts financial as well as social. We've partnered with CDFIs at a low interest rate for this to, so those dollars can subsequently be invested in the communities that need the access to capital desperately and at a lower cost of rate to borrow than higher lending, oftentimes traditional financial institutions. And I did want to note that there is a consideration for an administration fee. So while CCF would be the partner organization to get these funds out the door, we would really be there to run the program, ensure reporting standards, and that the dollars are being used for what they, to maintain the integrity of the dollars as expressed in any ARPA restrictions or the city of Charleston, as well as a loan loss reserve, important to note for the scaling for success. While they're always, we hope for 100% success rate, speaking with my peers, especially Cindy Rourke from the Climb Fund, she is also a member of the cohort, and it's important to maintain and make sure that there is a percentage for loan loss reserve for those, in case of failure. And then next slide, please. So then just to see full circle, the third initiative that the ROC is really focused on is building out a small business ecosystem. So as I mentioned, SCASID and Increasing Hope, two partners of the cohort, they, very excited to share that they were recently awarded an EDA grant as well as an SBA Community Navigator Pilot Program grant to sustain their efforts around technical assistance training. So while we are not asking as part of this, the ARPA funds, asking for dollars to support this initiative, I did think it was important to share with you all how we sort of will see this full circle in the seeding and sustaining, scaling for success, and ultimately building a small business ecosystem. So those grant dollars that our cohort partners were awarded towards the goals of their organizations and technical assistance will also leverage into our ultimate plan of the entire build out of the ROC recommendations. This could look like program support staff, contract services. We've had discussions in depth about what's missing, potentially money management, credit repair, who's at the table, like was discussed in the last presentation with Ruth and Meg, who's at the table and who's doing what, and we're making sure that there's equitable, representation, that people's voices, that all the people that are doing this work are really being brought into the conversation, that we're not necessarily duplicating our efforts, but that we're there to ensure that we do have enough assistance. And Dorothea, if you can speak to this, but I know her serving as the Increasing Hope, there is a long queue and a long wait list of individuals that are looking to receive that one-on-one assistance and that training. So I think there is room at the table for additional individuals to be there to provide that technical assistance to ensure success for these businesses. Next slide, please. And then ultimately, just to reiterate what we are doing with the Reinventing Our Communities, we're really looking to reinvent and support and empower the Charleston community. So the businesses in our community, we want to make sure that they have access to become successful, and then thinking about the longevity of their business and how they ensure that they're successful long-term in their plans for succession planning, and how we can ensure that they have a place in our community, access to the funds and the capital that is needed, and continue to grow their efforts so that they can provide additional jobs to community members. So ultimately, with this ask, we're continuing to build out the ROC cohort plan and our recommendations. While we're going to continue to do so and build the plan regardless, it would be incredibly helpful and beneficial to understand and know what access to capital we might have in order to actually fund those projects that we're making, those three initiatives, those three real goals, those seeding and that early access to capital, that scaling for success, as well as not part of the ARPA ask, but the technical assistance. So we're 1/3 of the way there, and we'd really like to be able to come to you all with an ask of how we could potentially tap into the city's ARPA dollars to support these efforts, building upon the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee, and just taking those recommendations, running with them, and putting them to work. And with that, I welcome any questions and appreciate your time. Councilwoman Jackson.
I think so. So we'll have Councilwoman Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that Councilmember Saccharin wasn't able to be on the CU committee as he normally would today. So I just texted him. I said he's been hiding his rock light under a bushel because I didn't know anything about this. We communicate regularly about our goals for economic development, especially in the minority business community. And so this is a very happy surprise to me as I'm ending my term on council. I don't have any reason to brag about it yet because I haven't attended my first meeting, but I'm very honored to have been appointed to be a new board member to the Climb Fund. So I'm not going anywhere in terms of entertaining these kinds of opportunistic game plans. I guess in looking at the actual details of the economic empowerment set of recommendations, and I appreciate that the report that's being given to us today is, sort of building from the executive summary section of the report and staying more at a high level. But one of the things that I know in being a witness to all of the good work ongoing, as Meg said, weekly work of the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee, was the idea of helping business owners become stakeholders in the real estate game in the city as well. So nothing that I've heard from you all, addresses that. I appreciate that you're trying to be, judicious and asking us for money that we actually have control of with the ARPA fund delivery. But I personally resonate with the education that I received from the former CEO of what wasn't the Climb Fund yet, but it is the Climb Fund now, Steve Saltzman. And I know that Mr. Mazik was also equally vocal and educational to all of us about the idea of establishing a capital portfolio that would be a guarantee for business owners that would normally not be worthy of the best loan terms from a traditional financing lender. And the idea that we could create a fund that would guarantee the difference. So let's say a business was asking, looking at a typical loan of 70% loan to value, whatever it is they were trying to accomplish with that capitalization. And if we had a guarantee fund that could make that more of a 90% loan to value, and then because the whole construct of that is when you've got a portfolio that is being spread out over a lot of borrowers that would be eligible to get that extra 20% on a loan as a guarantee, the odds of losing that extra 20% on any one business owner, going out of business or not being able to pay out on their debt are very low. So it becomes pretty much of a sure thing for the guarantor to be able to use those monies over and over and over again. And that builds the success and the wealth that I think we're all truly hoping will be the result of this amazing set of recommendations that, the special committee members worked on for a year. So I'm just throwing that out there. I know this is not for, any conversation right this minute, but I do hope the Coastal Conservation Foundation will take, the foundation will take seriously that kind of recommendation from the subcommittee, as well as the city. And again, go to the private sector to be able to supplement those sorts of bigger numbers. So if we had to vote today, I would support your ask. You're not asking us to vote today, and I do hope that it goes forward. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do want to just lift up and share, because I know I kind of probably glazed over it, but there within the initiative number 2, that scaling for success, there actually is the conversation. We have had that conversation and the inclusion of the infrastructure fund to support Black building ownership. So that is very intentional in our efforts to make sure that we are supporting business owner or Black business owners that are looking to actually purchase property and think about the longevity of their business. And there are different types of credit that the loan, you know, if it was the 1.5 or the 1.25 to 1.5 could potentially look like, you know, long-term capital guarantees. So, you know, you mentioned that, you know, that loan guarantee for to bring that to 90/10 line of credit for business developers. And this is where we would really look to partner with our financial institution partners, to be honest. So whether it's Climb Fund, you know, South Carolina Community Loan Fund, we've worked with Community Works in the past as well. They're a statewide CDFI and they make investments in all areas of the state, but being thoughtful in that regard to make sure that we're thinking about the different types of capital that can be actually infused into the community.
Have you discussed?
Yes, ma'am. Great. I'll be just a few minutes, a couple of minutes.
Yes. The banks in their CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, to kind of work to capture some of Councilmember Jackson's issue with regard to guarantee, because they would have the resources to be able to do it, and they may be able to do it through their CRA.
We have explored CRA, especially for some of, you know, CCF. I'm speaking from CCF's perspective here and kind of taking off my rock cohort hat. CCF has often explored opportunities to partner with banks for their CRA funds in a interesting, creative way to tap into capital. That hasn't necessarily come up yet with this program, but I think it's an excellent point. And, you know, I'll note that ways that we can engage with local banks, whether that's, banks located on the peninsula, in our communities that have made commitments to finance a specific dollar amount in our communities around these types of initiatives. So we'll certainly explore that as an opportunity to access capital for these types of projects, especially for the building ownership.
And I think that one of the banks that Ms. Jordan mentioned, Beacon, might be prime to participate in that. They are community oriented. I would like to be.
Wonderful. I'll add that. Thank you.
Councilmember Mitchell, the mayor's hand is up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize, I need to sign off from the meeting, but before I did, I did want to ask, and by the way, thank you for the presentation and all the thoughtfulness that went into this. And I think the goals and the strategies are all things that we're aligned with. I am curious, given the, I guess you'd say, pressure on our own ARPA funds. In fact, we have had to use most of our ARPA funds just to try to make our annual budgets balance last year and even going into next year. Have you asked for funding from other sources, other parts of ARPA and Coastal Community Foundation, I think, has assets over a couple $100 million. Are you asking for these to kind of spread the wealth, so to speak, and share the costs of these programs you're proposing?
We have not explored ARPA funds outside of the city at this point. I know that this opportunity to consider the city of Charleston ARPA funds came up from a conversation with Amber, Meg, just exploring ideas of capital that's available. So while we have not yet tapped in or made a formal ask for consideration outside of the city, certainly we'll potentially consider that. Given that the focus is supporting businesses in the city and the alignment with the economic empowerment recommendations, we thought it would be beneficial to approach this committee and think about the city of Charleston ARPA funds. Regarding CCF and our dollars, we most of our dollars are restricted to donor advised funds. We do have our impact portfolio, and that, has consideration. We have had an influx of, or an investment in communities around economic empowerment, job creation, especially for our first round of investments. That was actually all Charleston based. CCF does have a 9-county footprint, so we're along the coastline. So we also are making sure that we're equitable with the distribution of our capital. So that $3 million PBII portfolio is really based for all 9 counties. And should there be an opportunity to tap into ARPA dollars that would partner with the PBII portfolio, that would specifically be earmarked for City of Charleston initiatives, as well as minority-owned businesses that are operating for this specific initiative and agenda.
Great, thank you. I apologize, Mr. Chairman and everyone. I need to sign off. Good to be with y'all.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had 2 already signed off already, so we can go into anything else? Any other questions we have?
That was the end of our presentation. So I want to thank you guys so much for giving us the time to present and share all of our work. And again, big shout outs to my staff who put this together and have been working on all of these projects. And we are happy to come back to give updates or answer any additional questions that you all have.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for the information. I know it's not absolved at this moment, but we'll be getting some things and looking over it so we can keep abreast of it. But I thank you all for coming in. Thank you all for enlightening us on all this, because I have to get my head around it too.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Gregory?
I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you for making the hard work of the commission become real. And I mean, that also goes for our housing and community development office as well. I think the kind of seriousness, and I think the word is intentional, okay? Intention that you're putting into this is exactly what the commission's vision is. So again, I just want to say thank you. And if all of them go as well as the last couple that we've had, I think we're definitely on the right track as a city. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Councilman, we are pushing forward. We are pushing forward with this, and we're gonna do the best we can. And because I didn't want to see all that hard work that the volunteers did go in vain. And that was my take on it. They did a lot of work, spend a lot of hours, and council. We as a council, we instructed them to go out and do this and so. So I couldn't let this go by and fall by the wayside.
Well, I think it's because of your leadership, Mr. Chairman, that this is happening. I think without that, we could have been cut off at the pass. So I really appreciate what you've done to sort of push this agenda forward.
And I got to thank Ms. Johnson for pushing me forward too. Okay, we can go on. We can move right along. And Ms. Johnson, you have anything else to say about this particular presentation? I'll be going to the.
No, but I many thanks to May, the Coastal Community Foundation, all of the team members that played a part in this. I see Dorothea Bernique's name, critical partners that do amazing work on a regular basis. So we appreciate their efforts. So thank you all. Council member, there are 2 other items. The number 2 item on the agenda is an update on the accessory dwelling units and an affordability period therein.
Right.
When you all considered this ordinance previously, it did not have an affordability period defined. It inferred that the affordability period would be for perpetuity. Since that time, we have had quite a bit of calls, emails, since the newspaper articles on the ADUs. Many folks are interested and want to play a part in this. I think we have there are 3 to 5 folks that email Matt or myself on a weekly basis regarding the ADUs. The concern from most of the residents that have reached out to us is the idea of having an AD accessory dwelling unit for perpetuity is of concern. So what we are recommending this evening is that we put an affordability period on this of 30 years, and naturally this would have to go back to Planning Commission again. Our goal would be to get it before them in December. And I know that we've struggled with longer term affordability periods in our community. However, what we are seeing is folks are not willing to bite on this apple unless we can give them a more defined affordability period. And Matt, if you could put up for the members of the city committee what we sent earlier. Do you have that attachment?
Yeah, 1 second. And this was a draft, so we've made some additional changes since, but it's pretty straightforward. It's just adding a restriction so that the affordability period lasts for 30 years on the accessory dwelling unit. That's really what it is. And again, there have been a couple of changes that would be presented in the finished version for Planning Commission, but we'll send that to you once it's ready to go.
And so Chair Mitchell, we wanted to present this to city committee this evening because we brought it to you initially to secure any feedback, hear any concerns that you all might have as we stretch towards sending it back to the Planning Commission. Again, the goal being to increase the tools and opportunities in our community for affordable housing and actually engage in a way that we never have before. One of the things I would also share with the City Committee of City Council is that many cities that have ADU ordinances do not have an affordability criteria therein. When Matt did the outreach and research to a number of cities across our nation and even locally in Mount Pleasant, they don't require affordability at all. So we're stretching ourselves a bit, wanting to do this with the affordability requirements attached, but I think we have to be reasonable in our approach. And so we want to at least add this in, see how it works and move forward in that vein. So we would ask your support of it. I can answer any questions that the committee might have.
Yeah, quick question.
Sure.
So we didn't have an affordability period before?
Yes.
It was silent?
Correct. We had not defined. It was inferred that it would be perpetuity, but
Right.
folks who are doing this for the first time, and we have, I would say, virgin homeowners who are coming into the development industry, having to say to them that this is into perpetuity causes them to back off and shake their heads. There's the uncertainty there.
What about if we start with 50 years and then 50 years?
50?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they would still shake their heads. I'm not sure how they're going to respond to 30. 30 had been our typical go-to with many of our deals in the past. We could certainly try that, but we know that perpetuity was too long.
Well, we may meet in the middle at 40. I mean, I just think as you, and I'm sure you agree, we want to max out as much time as we can. Is this the program where we've been giving incentives to develop the units?
Right. So what we agreed to and what you all agreed to, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago when we first proposed this, is that for the first 10 applicants, approved applicants, we would put in $20,000 upon CO as an incentive. And I think that's really what drew a number of people to this process. And so that was the commitment that we made toward incentivizing, if you will, getting the ADUs in Charleston.
And so their issue is if it's too long, it's going to affect their profit margin, because if they can go market rate, they can make more money. Is that the issue?
Yeah.
I think the issue is simply perpetuity. We're asking them to keep this forever. So when you tell someone who's entering into the development arena, investing their money, because they're investing a larger portion of their money where they have not before, when you say this has to be an ADU unit forever, that's pretty daunting to folks who have not done this before. And so we're literally asking homeowners who are entering into this market the first time to keep a unit affordable for perpetuity. That seems overwhelming to them. And so many of them have kind of backed off and asked us to reconsider maybe adding a defined affordability period onto this ordinance. And Matt, please jump in if there are other things that you've heard.
I would recommend 40 years. I would go with 40 years. We're not going with perpetuity. We're not going with 50 years, which is half of what we were talking about. And let's try 40 years and see what happens.
And that 40 years goes with that those years go with the unit, regardless of who owns it.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I got it.
Yes. That's,
yeah.
and see if that would change the aspect of what they're looking for.
Okay. Matt, any comments from you on what you've heard and learned from the other communities across the country?
Yeah, I mean, as Gianna said earlier, City of Charleston really took a bold stance by making the ADUs to be affordable effectively in perpetuity. So it's, you know, we're leading the way around the country. Just as of yet, the results haven't been there. And that's why, you know, all these phone calls that we're receiving, there's definitely interest in the city. I think it's just a matter of fine tuning the ordinance till we get it right. And that's what we've found in other cities, like in Portland, Seattle, around the country, other areas, that it takes some years to get the ordinance correct. And even, you know, with the City of Charleston, we have this affordability restriction. So we have another layer of policy making that we have to fine tune. So that's why we're here to request this defining the affordability period.
Thank you, Matt.
Was the logic behind it 30 is that's generally sort of the lifetime of a mortgage?
Correct. And that's what we had done in the past when we entered into agreements with nonprofit corporations who were building units in the city. We were using that as a basis because 30 years is typical mortgage time frame on loans that you secure from the financial institutions.
Is there any way that we can tie an incentive of affordability for someone who purchases it after the 30 year or after whatever period of time we put on there? Is there a way for us to come up with some incentive that would allow whoever the new owner might be to keep the affordability for another 30 years?
Possibly. We haven't looked that far because we're simply trying to get it started. Mm-hmm. And so wanting to define or put a term on the affordability period to draw them in initially, because as Matt said, even though we have it out there, folks have expressed interest, we have not had anyone to actually move forward. Okay. And so hence our reason for bringing it back to you all first in anticipation of going to Planning Commission in December. So beyond the first 30, we haven't thought that far along, just to be perfectly honest.
Okay. Well, there was some way for us to put a caveat in there. I don't know how to structure it, but you know.
It could be possible to include that as part of the incentive with the grant funds. So that's something we could look into further.
Okay.
I mean, I would look at if I would look at both. If you look at the 40 years, or look at the 30 years, and then end up 10 years behind it, that will still bring up to the 40 years. You know, in just looking at it that way. But if you're looking at 30 years, just to get them in there, but if we can have this caveat for another 10 years, and whoever purchases it again, that will still kind of keep it affordable so far as I'm concerned, you know, the affordability part of it. Because we are, you know, we get to affordable, getting to affordable units is getting pretty rough here. So that's why.
Councilwoman, thank you, Councilmember Rich. I think Councilwoman Jackson had her hand up.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just had a couple of observations. I mean, I do think that, you know, across communities and metropolitan areas that are struggling with providing housing units overall, that, you know, I think the trend is to sacrifice the affordability for the opportunity to have more units, no matter what. I know that we had this, you know, pretty extensive discussion, as I recall, a couple of years ago when we were first talking about this, that by making the ADU the affordable unit, we're sometimes taking away the option of you know, a homeowner that's aging in place, for example, that might want to move into that unit and then rent their house out. And I don't know how the, you know, the actual ordinance in front of us has, you know, impacted that kind of opportunity, so that the property owner can use the bigger part of their property as an income source and then live in an age appropriate, you know, ADU. I know people personally who are doing that in other parts of the country. As far as the length of time, I mean, I think we have to also look at the realistic, you know, challenges to needing to enforce and police the affordability. First of all, if it's on the deed at the time that the house is issued a certificate of occupancy, then that's a pretty definitive, you know, clock. You can say, as of, like, when my house was built, July 21st, 2015 is the beginning of the 30-year clock. To have to reset it every time the house would sell, and knowing that we're never going to have enough staff to really, you know, pay attention to these kinds of things, I think we would be setting ourselves up for, you know, potential failure, or at least criticism that we're not able to regulate the you know, the ordinances that we're establishing. So those are just my two observations. I'm more than happy. Do you need an actual recommendation today, or can we put this forward to the Planning Commission and see what they would come back with? I'm happy to support the 40-year you know, change, if that becomes the common wisdom of the three of us that are left on this meeting. But I do think
Sure.
trying to reset it is probably too ambitious.
Sure. And Councilwoman Jackson, to one of your points in F1 on the ordinance, either the principal structure or the accessory dwelling unit must be owner occupied. So there is some options there.
Okay, good.
To serve as the owner's primary residence. My preference, as we did before we submitted this to Planning Commission, was to move forward with a recommendation from the City Committee of City Council. So yes, I would like to garner that from you all this evening. Whether it changes once we get to Planning Commission or not will be determined at that time. Certainly it's going to come back to City Council, but I think it would be appropriate certainly to have a recommendation from the City Committee of City Council with regard to this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a question, a point of order.
Yes.
Can three of us do that? We don't have a quorum?
Oh, I didn't realize we lost.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's gone.
Huh?
We have two already left. Air's gone. Councilman Waring had to leave for another meeting, so.
Is
Okay.
Appel still on?
No.
I don't see him.
No.
Vanessa, do we need 4 on CD committee or is it 3?
I think you need
4, okay, so no, actually, okay.
7 members.
Okay. I mean, is there something that we could, without voting, saying that we support it and send it?
Sure, you can, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go, Mr. Chairman. that the majority of us supported it. We just didn't have a quorum to vote on it.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay.
Can we do that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the committee can make a recommendation and report that out at council, and council can vote on it.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, so we also make the recommendation from the city committee to support the 40 years with the ADU going to the planning commission.
Aye.
Will that be it?
It would have to, yes, because it would have to come back as an ordinance.
Right.
But it would just be council voting to authorize staff to make that change. And then it would have to come back in the form of an ordinance to change the code.
So we're sending, we're going to send it to
Planning.
planning, then planning. Okay.
Then it'll come back to city council.
City council. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All righty.
Okay.
Very good. And finally, the last item, and this is really just for information, but I think it's important for you all to be reminded of everything that's going on in light of the tremendous need for affordable housing in the community, what projects in particular are in process. And so I'm going to try to go through this quickly because it's now 5:14.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt, if you will share the map so that the committee can get a sense of where these are. You all are very familiar with the James Lewis Jr. apartments, 64 units for persons earning 60% and below. That is in Peninsula Charleston. That is underway at this time. Archer Elementary School, which is at 220 Nassau, that'll be from 80 to 88 units of senior housing, rental housing. They have gone through, are going through TRC and have applied for funding from the state. So making good progress there. Abington of Charleston, which is near the Bearfords Parkway, that will be 90 units of family rental for 60% and below. They have had their challenges. They have gotten through the ARB approvals through the Beresford Road or Beresford Community ARB, and they are now going through TRC and making great progress there. They do now have a gap in funding as a result of some of the requirements from the ARB, and so we are working with them to try to fill that gap, and it's about a $1.5 million, $2 million gap that we are working with the CRC and the Klein Fund to determine who can best help them meet that gap. Bulls Creek, which is at 2235 Ashley River Road. You all are familiar. If you're in the West Ashley community, please go by. They are probably 40 to 50% complete on construction, making great progress. Again, if you are in that area, I encourage you to drive by there. 62 units of rental housing for families. Orleans Gardens, formerly Orleans Gardens, now Waters of West Ashley. That is a full substantial rehabilitation of all of those units, all 100 units there. They are making great progress there, probably 40% in, putting in new HVACs, putting in a new center for the children. We've waited a long time for that one to happen. So I'm actually excited about that. 573 Meeting Street, which is 70 units that 180 Place is helping to facilitate. We should see them beginning their construction end of first quarter of 2022. They have finalized their funding. They're literally waiting on the State Accountability Office to approve the bond dollars that have been put forth. Homes of Hope, they are building the Pear Point for sale product to 75 units. They have gotten through DRB. So we should actually see progress towards construction in 2022. 3073 Murray Wood Road is just one project that's in the preliminary stages that will be forthcoming. 26 Reed Street, another Peninsula property. The city gave that property to Charleston Habitat. That is about 70% complete, but that will be provided to a single mom and her child. Very exciting. 79 Cooper Street coupled with 5 Porter's Court. We actually have the full designs for those. We actually backed off starting construction because the construction costs were so high. They were well over $300,000. So we plan to rebid that along with 2 others first quarter of 2022. The Esau Jenkins Village, which is on Johns Island, Maybank Highway, that's 72 units of senior, I believe. And
Yes.
they will, I heard a yes, thank you. They will begin construction hopefully summer of 2022. 36 Cooper Street, you approved transfer of that property to Palmetto Cap.
Yeah.
They have engaged an architect for that development, and we will see a minimum of 4 to 6 units of rental housing from 60 to 80% there. 1555 Juniper Street, we will release bids for those 10 townhomes. That is a for sale product in the Ardmore subdivision. 10 units, we will release those bids in first quarter of 2022, and you should see the finalization of those hopefully less than a year from when we release those bids. 195 Romney Street, that consists of about 5 units. The pastors organization is doing that in concert with New Israel Reformed Episcopal Church. There are a total of 5 of those units. 2 of those will be affordable. Also working with the Tame Foundation, which is Trinity AME Church on Meeting Street. They're slated to build 5 units. 3 of those will be in the affordable realm. Continuing to work with Reverend Barnes's church at 60 Nassau Street. They are finalizing another 2 units in the rear building, which is an historic building. And so they are moving forward. In fact, they are looking at a partnership with one of our hot-will providers so that those units will be available for that population. 67 America Street, you're well familiar with, 6 for sale. Those will be starting hopefully in the first quarter of 2022. The low-line housing project, 55 units, we are finalizing the environmental, and I imagine by spring of 2022, the construction will begin there. Fingers crossed. You all are familiar with Laurel Island and Courier Square. Those units will hopefully be forthcoming in the next year or so. Housing Authority, 275 Hugie Street. That is part of their RAD, the Rental Assistance Demonstration Project, where they will be creating 63 units. Why did I want that to be 83, Matt? But I'll leave it at 63. They are undergoing some formative stages. I imagine second quarter of 2022, that will begin, if not before. Bermuda Point.
Deanna, it's 63 additional.
Thank you. So there were 12 before, correct?
Right.
Correct.
I knew I needed a higher number there. That's why. Thank you, Matt, for that clarity. Bermuda Point is a new development. The Charleston Redevelopment Corporation is working with the Berry Company to build 40 townhouses, West Ashley. 30 of those will be affordable. And then finally, 2319 Berta Garrett Street, the CRC has purchased that property, and there is 1 single family detached home being constructed there. That totals about 1,682 units total. Now we just need to do 1,800 a year to get to that 16,000 by the end of the decade. So that's our report, and we'll try to at least quarterly in 2022 update you on where the numbers are so that you're well versed in what we're attempting to accomplish.
Yeah, Ms. Johnson, if you have opportunity, could you give me get a copy of that for me? Normally, most of the ones that's in my district, because I have a whole lot of them that's coming forth in the district from Rosemont all the way down. So I just want to get a look at that. So when people ask me about the affordable housing piece, what we are doing with affordable housing, I will have that information.
Oh, absolutely.
kind of absorb it.
Yes, sir.
And also with all these garden apartments, will they still remain the same as they are now, Section 8 housing, or what?
Yes, sir. They're going to continue to assist persons 65% and below. And so they'll continue to accept vouchers.
Okay, because I know that at first it was based on income, but they considered Section 8 housing. And
Right.
that's what HUD was doing. I don't know if it was going to still remain the same way based on income the way it was. I don't know.
Yes, sir. They are.
All righty.
Most of
Thank
those
you.
folks are well below that
Yeah.
level.
Ms.
Yes, sir.
Jackson, quickly.
Yes, Chairman Mitchell, I'm going to say that as the 3 old dog council members that are on this meeting, that we should challenge ourselves to click on the link and do this housing dashboard in real time, just like Matt showed us how to do that. So I think we could get together. I'll be happy to be the guinea pig and we'll learn how to look at the dashboard. It's really fun. The stormwater department has done the same thing. They put their projects on a map like this. You click on that little blue thing and then you get the information about the housing project. So let's do that, okay? Down with paper, up with interactive dashboards.
Councilmember, thanks for mentioning that. I just want to plug really quick. So the affordable housing dashboard is still in progress. We're still developing it, but I want to thank Sandy Gagne from GIS and then Chloe Stuber with our planning department for working together to get all of that information with our existing affordable housing properties and those that are proposed into this dashboard. And it's going to be the finished version will have a lot more information. So I think you all will be interested to see that once it's ready to go.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, the one thing that I did notice is the term, and most of them were 30 to 40 years in terms of affordability, at least in some of the ones that I saw. And the reason I bring that up is, does that mean in another 30 years, the crisis is just it's gonna continue and continue? Don't get me wrong, I'm happy and satisfied. But I'm just saying, just being, real, that in 30 years, the crisis will continue, particularly since most of those may go market rate.
And I'll just mention, Councilmember Gregory, good point, but also there are a number of them that, for instance, Archer, the city has the opportunity to purchase that at the end of its affordability period. So that's something at that point the city should be cognizant of. That's one of the recommendations that constantly comes up. Naturally, with the CRC, those go into a trust. So those are 99 years. Certainly anything that we help to facilitate from housing and community development, that's 90 years. But that is something to keep our eyes and ears on because it does have an impact on overall availability of units in our community. And I have no further items for you, Councilmember Mitchell.
All righty.
We'll just come back and haunt the city in 30 years, Councilmember Gregory.
Anybody else have any questions or anything else to bring before the meeting before we proceed to close?
Good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.